Yeah, he's still here. You really are. Yes, he knows. He's the most popular. You know how to get hold of him. I know how to get hold of him. Really? It would be frugal. It would be good to talk. Oh yeah. If we can have him maybe come and get a presentation. Yeah, he would do that, sir. I mean, I can get a hold of him. All right. Because it's not, it doesn't make sense. We all work on the boat. I think they let us do that. Yeah, this was That's true. All right, so there's people there. I agree with you 100%.
I'm ready to go. All right, everyone. We're going to go ahead and call the Kenai Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for May 12th, 2021 to order. Will you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the All right, before we get going, I'm just going to find out if anyone has a problem with how close we are out there. We're technically over the amount of people that are recommended, so if anyone has an issue with it, we can fix it if we need to. If everybody's okay with it, we're just going to carry on.
We're good.
I think that would be good, Jeff, but if we need to, we can adjust and we can move.
Yeah, I think it's okay right now, but if maybe, if we get more people that still continue to come in, maybe once you've testified, if you could at least step out into the hall or something like that. But yep, okay. All right, very good. Moving on, then we'll go to A2 roll call, please.
Chair Twait,
Here.
Commissioner Springer,
Here.
Commissioner Halstead,
Here?
Commissioner Dothett,
Here.
Vice Chair Fikes,
Here.
Commissioner Greenberg,
Here.
and Commissioner Woodard.
Here.
You have a quorum.
All right, item A3, agenda approval. Wishes of the commission. Commissioner Greenberg,
I move to approve the agenda.
to include.
To include the
pretty thick
laydown.
laydown item there, right?
Yeah, to include the laydown.
Okay, we have a second?
A second.
Second. Any objections? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. Item A4, consent agenda. Commissioner Greenberg.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Motion made and seconded. Any objections? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. Takes us down to item C, scheduled public comment. We have none. Item D is unscheduled public comment. Anyone wishing to come forward and speak to an item that's not on the agenda? All right, seeing none, there's another option at the end of there if you want to participate in that portion of it as well. So that takes us to item E, consideration of plats. We have one before us tonight. E1 is PZ 2021-14, a preliminary plat subdivision for FBO subdivision number 11, submitted by Segasur Surveys on behalf of the city of Kenai. Staff report.
Good evening, Chair Twaits and fellow commissioners. My name is Ryan Foster. I'll be giving the staff presentation this evening on PZ 2021-14 preliminary plat for the FBO subdivision number 11. Next slide, please. Brief summary, Segasur Surveys has submitted a preliminary plat on behalf of the property owner, which is the city of Kenai. The city of Kenai wishes to increase the size of the lot 3 for the construction of approximately 5,600 square foot building to be used for stand storage for maintenance of the airfield. And you can see on the right-hand side, this is the existing lots. And the southern lot is the airfield operations center, and then the northern lot, which is really just a largely treed site with a pad on it that is leased to the Division of Forestry for their operations there, especially during summertime forest fire activities. Next slide, please. And so this is the preliminary plat that shows the adjustment of that boundary. The plat affects the parcels described as lots 3 and 4, FBO subdivision number 7. The proposed lot 3A of FBO subdivision number 11 is comprised of approximately 4.725 acres. And then the lot 4A FBO subdivision number 11 is comprised of approximately 2.475 acres. And again, you can see here the adjustment of that line to the north to provide more space next to the Airfield Operations Center for a sand storage facility. Next slide, please. Staff's analysis. Access to the proposed lots is provided via North Willow Street, which is a paved city-maintained road. Water and sewer lines are located within the right-of-way of North Willow Street. The airport operations building is connected to city water and sewer services. The lessee of Lot 4 FBO subdivision number 7 may connect to water and sewer services, and an installation agreement is not required. The preliminary plat meets requirements of KMC subdivision design standards and KMC 141080 minimum improvements required under Chapter 1410 subdivision regulations. Next slide, please. City staff recommends approval of the preliminary plat of FBO subdivision number 11, subject to the following conditions. Condition 1, Further development of the property should conform to all federal, state of Alaska, and local regulations. That concludes my presentation. Happy to stand for questions.
All right, thank you. Let's see if we can get a motion on the floor, please. Commissioner Commissioner Greenberg's got it.
I move to approve PZ 2021-14.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, and we will open this up for public testimony as well. If anyone wishes to come forward to speak to PZ 2021-14, now's the time. All right, do not see any. We'll close public hearing, bring it back to the commission. Any discussion? Commissioner Halstead, anything?
This looks pretty straightforward. I don't see any issues with this. I'd be voting in approval of it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Commissioner Springer,
Yes.
Commissioner Halstead,
Yes.
Commissioner Doffett,
Yes.
Vice Chair Fikes,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Woodard,
Yes.
and Chair Twait.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, that'll move us on to item F, public hearings. We have, I believe, 2 of those. F1 is Resolution PZ 21-15, an application for a conditional use permit for cabin rentals for the property described as Lot 3, James H. Cowan Estates, located at 1050 Angler Drive. Application submitted by Brian Lowe, Rachel Lowe, and Bryson Lowe. Staff report.
Thank you, Chair Twait and fellow commissioners. Staff's presentation is on Resolution PZ 2021-15. This is a conditional use permit for cabin rentals at 1050 Angler Drive. Brief summary. Applicant Brian Lowe. This is, again, for a property address at 1050 Angler Drive. This is approximately 1.41 acre property. The existing zoning is rural residential. It is a vacant parcel, and the land use plan is low density residential. And you can see the map here that shows the subject parcel. Next slide, please. Cabin rentals are listed as conditional use within the rural residential zone in Kenai Municipal Code 142210. The land use table, KMC 1420-320 definitions, defines cabin rentals as means of renting out of one or more individual detached dwelling units or buildings to provide overnight sleeping accommodations for a period of less than 30 consecutive days. Next slide, please. Site plan identifies a rough layout of the 4 rental cabins. Each cabin is approximately 428 square feet plus a porch. Next slide, please. Staff's analysis. Review criteria for conditional use permits. Pursuant to KMC 1420-150A, the intent of a conditional use permit is to allow some uses that may be compatible with the designated principal uses in specific zoning districts, provided certain conditions are met. KMC 1420-150D, conditional use permits review criteria, states 6 conditions that the Planning and Zoning Commission must deem to exist when establishing findings prior to issuing a conditional use permit. Next slide, please. And now we'll go through each of these 6 review criteria. Criteria 1, the use is consistent with the purpose of this chapter and the purposes of the intent of the zoning district. Staff's response is that the proposed 4 cabins meets the intent of the rural residential zone, provide for low-density residential development and outlying in rural areas in a form which creates a stable and attractive residential environment. The specific intent in establishing this zone is to separate residential structures to an extent which will, A, preserve the rural open quality of the environment, B, prevent health hazards in areas not served by public water and sewer. 2, to prohibit uses which would A, violate the residential character of the environment, and B, generate heavy traffic and predominantly residential areas. The land use table provides that cabin rentals are a conditional use. Therefore, a conditional use permit must be granted for construction and operation of these rental cabins. And the applicant has provided a site plan that provides the layout of the cabins and parking. And we'll talk a little bit about site plans in more detail when we review the conditions of approval, recommended conditions of approval. Criteria 2, the value of the adjoining property and neighborhood would not be significantly impaired. Staff's response is that parcels located the north, south, and east and west of the subject property are zoned rural residential and are undeveloped city-owned property to the west. With single-family residential uses of north, south, and east, the value of adjacent property should not be significantly impacted with the construction of 4 rental cabins. Generally speaking, new construction tends to increase property values in a neighborhood. Criteria 3, the proposed use is in harmony with the comprehensive plan. Staff's response is that the comprehensive plan has goals to support businesses and economic development and to provide a high quality of life within the city. There are several cabins, lodges, and guide services already on Angler Drive, and 4 additional rental cabins will not impair the quality of life within the neighborhood. Low-density residential land uses typically include single-family low density and large lots with an individual on-site water supply and wastewater disposal systems. Below are specific goals, objectives from the comprehensive plan that support this application. That's economic development 9, capitalize on the tourism industry by making Kenai as a destination for recreational activities, conventions, festivals, arts, cultural, and other events. Land use 2, promote the infill of existing improved subdivision lots. And quality 4, promote the siting and design of land uses that are in harmony and scale with surrounding uses. Criteria 4, public services and facilities are adequate to serve the proposed use. Staff's response is that city water and sewer is not in the vicinity of the subject property. Therefore, on-site water and wastewater treatment and disposal systems will be necessary. The applicant must meet the wastewater disposal requirements of KPB Chapter 2040 and the regulatory requirements of the Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation. The property has access to electricity and telephone services, and Angler Drive is a paved road which is maintained by the city of Kenai. Criteria 5, the proposed use will not be harmful to the public safety, health, or welfare. Staff's response is that the use of 4 rental cabins will not be harmful to public safety, health, or welfare. Staff believes that services are available to adequately serve this development, and the applicant has provided the city staff with the draft site plan which indicates there will be sufficient parking available for rental guests. Criteria 6, specific conditions deemed necessary. And that's on the next slide, please. Recommendations. City staff find that the applicant meets the criteria for issuance of a conditional use permit as set forth in subsections D1 through D4 of Kenai Municipal Code 142185, and hereby recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission approve the conditional use permit application subject to the following conditions. I'm actually going to go ahead. I'm going to read through these conditions, even though this is in the staff report and on these slides. 1, further development of the property shall conform to all federal, state of Alaska, and local regulations, and that's to note that a potential issuance of a conditional use permit doesn't mean that there aren't further steps that an applicant needs to take, such as Condition 2, prior to issuance of a building permit, a landscape site plan must be reviewed and approved by the planning director. And so we talked earlier about this really actually very rough site plan that was submitted with this conditional use permit application, that the applicant is actually going to have to provide a much more detailed landscape and site plan showing that they're able to meet the landscape standards as well as the zoning and site plan standards, setbacks, parking, all the development requirements for construction on this property. Condition 3, prior to beginning construction of the project, a building permit must be issued by the building official for the city of Kenai. Again, that's a separate building application that needs to be submitted for the building official and reviewed. Condition 4, a yearly conditional use permit report must be submitted to the city of Kenai prior to the 31st day of December for each year. Next slide, please. Condition 5, the applicant will meet with city staff for on-site inspections when requested. Condition 6, if there is a change of use for the above described property, a new conditional use permit must be obtained pursuant to 1420-150 I-5. Condition 7, pursuant to KMC 1420-150 I-2, this permit shall expire automatically upon termination or interruption of the use for a period of at least 1 year. And Condition 8, failure to provide documentation to the city for meeting these conditions shall be grounds for the suspension or revocation of the conditional use permit. That concludes my presentation. Happy to stand for questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Foster. Can we get a motion on the floor, please?
Motion.
Commissioner Dothett. Go ahead and read, can you read that in just the
What is the PZ on this?
2021-15?
Motion for approval on 2021-115.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Second.
All right, and we will open it up for, there wasn't a laydown on this one, I don't think, was there? No. And we did at the beginning anyway with that, so. All right, at this time, we'll open it up for public testimony. Anyone wishing to come forward and testify to PZ 2021-15? What's that? Oh, I guess even on this one, we need to do that too. Okay. So anyone in the council's chambers, we're going to go through those first, and then if there's anybody on Zoom, we'll do it. So anyone in the council chambers wishing to testify to PZ 2021-15?
I have a question.
So just so we can get you on here, and I probably should have jumped on this ahead of time, but when we do these public testimonies, I'll call on you, you come forward, and if you can state your name and address for the record, and then after that, the 3-minute time clock will start ticking, so.
Okay, my name's Jerry Huff. I live at 765 Ames Road. I'm just wondering why the city would consider issuing a conditional use permit before all the site plans are all documented and taken care of. This particular piece of property's already had the dirt work done, and I understand there's piling down there for the buildings already. So they're all well into this project already, and we're just now getting to the conditional use permit with conditions. And with Angler Drive, a lot of the problems in the Angler Drive right now are that people get conditional use permits under conditional use protocols, and after 6 months, all those conditional use protocols are thrown out the window, and they're doing other things than what they're supposed to be doing. More people staying there, more boats, more this, more that. So when we come to the city of Kenai for resolutions to try to straighten this problem out, we have no recourse. The city doesn't do anything. They don't go down. They don't say, hey, you're outside of your bounds of your conditional use permit. You're working outside of the conditional use boundaries. If we don't have any teeth in the conditional use process within the city of Kenai. We've got several problems down on Angler Drive as today, we already have problems with that. I mean, we have people running around with golf carts on city streets. We have people that are, running practically a restaurant to sell liquor. They sell alcohol. They have parties. They have loud music till late at night. The police have been called dozens and dozens of times on a particular individual that's going to be involved in this project. So the part of the problem is that they leave it to the residents of the city of Kenai, neighboring residents, to police their activities, and when we do, nothing ever gets resolved because they don't have any enforcement. So that's my big concern with issuing another permit on Angler Drive. In my opinion, the city should not issue any more conditional use permits for anything until they do something with the conditional use process. Because the way it looks to me like right now, as long as you cut and paste these conditions out of the 150-page document that the city, the criteria is, and they say you're gonna follow that, they'll give them a permit. No matter how many residents came in, no matter how much opposition you get, as long as they follow that criteria and that document, the city issues a permit, and then there's no recourse from that day forward. Some individuals down on Angler Drive have permits they're working off of that are in the name of their relatives that don't even live in the state anymore. They haven't been here they're not even residents here anymore. So I don't know when we say that they have to follow up with their permits every year, or somebody looks at it, I think what I've been told is that they ask them if their taxes are paid, if their property taxes are paid, but I don't think anybody ever goes by and says, hey, what are we doing here? I mean, and I don't expect the city to go and check these places out, but when you do come up with a complaint or a problem, the city should at least address it. Because this is the body that issues the permit, they should be the body that takes care of the problem.
Okay.
Appreciate your
Yep,
time.
and I'll tell you what, maybe, before I have you go down, I'll ask if anybody else has any questions here for Vice Chair Fikes.
So I understand some of your concerns. Have you taken them up with city staff or
Oh,
administration
yeah,
and
several times.
several times?
I mean, one of the individuals here is, guiding without a license, has boats on the river that aren't registered with the Park Service.
So I'll tell you what, we're gonna
we
try to.
could go on and on and
Yeah,
on
we'll
here,
try to
fellas.
keep this narrow, because this is gonna take a while to get through everybody. But I mean, if she's got a question, answer the question. We'll just try not to get
Sure.
veered off,
I mean,
because I
that's-
understand completely. Anybody else have any questions? Commissioner Dothett, no? Thinking. Good, all right.
No.
Okay, you can sit down.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, and again, in council chambers, anyone wishing to testify to PZ 2021-15?
Jeff, Ron Rogalski, 945 Ames Road, thank you very much.
Okay,
First of all, thank you all for your service on these boards, and I'm on several, and I know how much effort it is and what you got to sort through. I second what Mr. Huff just said, and one of the things that strikes very, very loudly home is a comment, and I don't remember, I didn't keep track of the notes, is the value of the surrounding area, the value to the neighborhood, the value to your property. And I know painfully well from having someone next to me, one of the things he spoke of, it greatly devalues the use of my property. It greatly devalues what I can do with it. And if I have to have full disclosure with real estate, as you well know, I have to tell somebody that this stuff's going on if I try to sell my property. It devalued it. And I would say to both these items that are on the docket here tonight is planning and zoning. Zoning, it has a reason why it's zoned. It has a reason why you zoned it that way in the first place. And to have to go say, well, I'm gonna get a conditional use permit, okay, well, I understand. Had a long discussion with the city manager, in fact, this afternoon, about how, conditional use permits work. And the fact that you can have those, you can ask to essentially bypass the rules. The rules are there for a reason. People buy these properties for a reason, and they absolutely want them to be followed. And then for someone to come in and say, well, I want to do something different, in particular, people who buy something when they already know what the zoning is, they move in when they already know what the zoning is. As Mr. Huff said, they start building something and say, well, let me go to these people and let them give me an exception to the rules so I can do something different than the city. And I can't emphasize enough, I know none of you people are involved in any of this. You don't live there, you don't know that. But if these people moved in next door to you and started doing some of the stuff that's going on with some of these conditional use permits, you would say, wait a minute, time out. As Mr. Huff said, the police have been involved in a number of them, and you say, well, the city has some oversight to this. Recognize they do, but it's a tough duty. You guys don't get called to come down and deal with it. The city comes down to deal with it. The police officers have to come down, take their time off of doing something much more important than coming down to deal with some problem in their neighborhood. I've had these conversations with them many times, and they keep just adding on and adding on and adding on. But I would summarize with, these people come in and try to do something that isn't set up, it isn't approved, it isn't allowed, but let me do it. Let me get an exceptional use permit, right? So that I can come in and do something that, really wasn't built. The neighborhood wasn't built for it, the zoning wasn't built for it. I would just leave it at that. Thanks very much for your time.
oh, you don't get to go that quick. Hang on, somebody might have a question for you. Anyone have any questions?
I just have a question. In this particular neighborhood, the one we're talking about, do you have a rough idea how many, or maybe you don't know, or maybe Mr. Foster might be able to look it up for us. How many conditional use permits are currently active or for this particular type of business in that particular area?
In that particular area,
Off, I guess it would be the Angler Drive and general
okay,
area.
quite a few, in fact. And if we go back in history, I know I'm over my limit, so I'm somebody's time.
No, as long as they ask you a question, you're good. You can,
At one point, there was a proposal to lift the zoning down there because there were so many conditional use permits. There's a bunch. There really is. And most of them are very straightforward, and they do their business and stuff. I know a couple of them very well. And the thing is, they you know, the more you get, the more you get. And it's kind of like almost you know, they're all down there, we're going to do some more. And that's where the, you know, the creep comes. But I would argue again that I know at least 2 people live in that particular area. They're not here tonight, and some of them are seasonal, some of them are not. But they live there. They don't run cabins, they don't run rentals and stuff, but now here's some rentals around you. Here's some more rentals around you. And I know we can't discriminate against who owns it, where they come from, right? But I will readily admit to having a bias to seasonal people who buy something and not here all year, but then they flood it, you know, in the summer. We buy our property in rural residential so we can live there and live there year round, not so these people can come around it. And it's like, okay, as long as they keep a level keel, people are pretty much okay with that. But when it starts getting here, there, and now more come, and now more come. So there is a bunch, and as I said, there was a push at one time to just lift the zoning down there so they didn't have to deal with it. And I won't even quote the person's name who said, this is too much paperwork for me. I want this crap stopped, so let's just
Okay.
zoning.
we're going to keep this thing between some bumpers here so we don't get too far off track.
I'm over it, so.
There's quite a few. That was the answer to the question, right? There's quite a few businesses. Okay.
Understand a lot.
All right.
Sorry.
Anyone else have any questions? All right.
Probably
Thank you.
not.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right. Anyone else in council chambers wishing to testify to PZ 2021-15? Please come forward. Same thing. Name and address for the record.
Thank you. My name's Rick Baldwin. Live at 3080 Kiminange Court, Kenai. Given the fact that you're actually stuck with statutes that you have to follow, I'd like to talk about those for a minute in relation to this particular application. Conditional use permit does provide for flexibility, but you have to consider the impact of the proposed use on the surrounding property. That's under your conditional use permit statute. And you have to be sure that this it subscribes to the conditions and the intent of the chapter and the other zoning areas in which the conditional use permit is to be granted. With respect to the rural residential zone, the big item I think that's being discussed tonight is whether it would prohibit uses which would violate the residential character of the environment. And I think I read environment to mean neighborhood. With respect to Angler Drive, I think the key question then that you have to ask is that would this violate the key character of this particular neighborhood, the key residential character of this particular neighborhood? And I think from what you've heard, very little residential character remains in the Angler area. It's fish central. It's got lodges in it. It's got, I don't know what plexes, or no, there's at least 4 plexes, but people are building back in there to house their seasonal employees and clients. Their lodges, and I think if you look, you could find a smattering of residences, but I'm not sure that a residence down there that's not associated with the lodging and guiding business is going to be found. So I guess the point is the residential character of this neighborhood is such that, yeah, As was pointed out by your staff, a few more cabins probably isn't going to make much difference in the character of this particular neighborhood. And so as I read your code, you're probably well within your discretion, and you may grant this. You're not obligated to grant it. But you may grant this permit. And I think because it is what's being asked for is consistent with the character of this particular neighborhood. Thank you.
All right, anyone have any questions for Mr. Baldwin? No? All right, anyone else in the chamber area to testify to PZ 2021-15? I don't think so. You could whisper it to somebody and have them come up and do it. There's an opportunity.
Just having a discussion here, I mean, this is, you know, it's important, but that's all right.
We've got to give everybody an opportunity.
Well, I'll tell you what, here's what I'll do. If there is nobody else to testify to this one here, I'll let you come up for a minute if you can cram it through in a minute. But need you to come up again so we can be, are you good?
Sure.
Okay. You don't want to come up then?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, come on up.
I thought I was waiting for everybody else, so. Yeah, I may want to comment.
Oh, yeah, you're up here. We'll check out in,
You need my name again?
yep, if you
Okay,
can.
my name is Jerry Huff. I live at 765 Ames Road. I just had to make a comment on Rick's testimony there that he is correct that Engler Acres is saturated with conditional use permits, guiding outfits, lodges, and most of these people are responsible people. A lot of them live here year-round. Some don't. But this just proves the point that Engler used to be a residential neighborhood. And it's just evolved into, you know, a tourism fishing area because that's what the access from Beaver Creek in that area. So basically it's evolved into what it is today, and we have a permit coming up here in a minute. And that's part
We'll
of,
get to that one,
Yeah,
yep.
we'll get to that one in a minute, but that's kind of why we're all here. But I just want to stress the fact that that used to be a predominantly residential neighborhood. Just people lived there, and now it's evolved into what it is today, which is, in some cases, is very undesirable to the area for other people. So that's my comment.
Very good, thank you, appreciate it.
Okay.
Oh, you have a question?
So I guess maybe to summarize what I keep hearing opposition to is possibly the emphasis on the land use being the zoning for rural residential, and I'm hearing lodging and maybe a characterization of lodging. You would think of just an overnight guest, come in, come out, exit, and then also you hear about a lodge, and so maybe a characterization might be for an event. An event taking place could be something as ruckus and rowdy as a liquor license party, free-for-all all night, and so now you've got this business activity, functions, events crashing up against the rural residential, and so I guess as
Well,
a-
they're outside their permit.
Right,
conditions
that's
of
what
the
I was, that's what I was gearing towards, and so my question, coming back to those that are testifying, is how many of you are going to administration and actively complaining, and are those complaints getting recorded? And it's my understanding through the process that if enough complaints are lodged, that those
How many
permits will
do
be
you need, ma'am? I
denied.
hate to interrupt you, but, I mean, how many times does the police have to come?
I'm not referring
I'm
to
just
the
saying,
police,
because this has
so,
been
yeah.
going now for 5 years. This one particular gentleman is causing problems and has been for quite a bit. But, and I don't mean to be rude or anything. I guess my patience level is running thin with the city and enforcement of these conditional use permits. So that's where we stand right now. I mean, my wife's uncle homesteaded Chalk subdivision, the whole thing. It was never intended to be, you know, mixed commercial, tourism, mixed tourism, residential, and Chalk.
Okay.
You know, we can
Yeah,
go on
I
and
know,
on.
but seriously, yeah, I appreciate
fine.
it,
I
but,
just,
yep,
you know.
nope, 100%, but, thank you.
I'm finished.
All right, thanks. All right, now we're gonna go and see if anyone is on Zoom that would like to testify to PZ 2021-15.
Hey, if you're on Zoom and you want to testify, just use the raise hand feature or unmute yourself, and we will call on you. And it looks like first we have username ReeseCon. If you would state your name and address for the record.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me okay? Okay, thank you. My name is Jim Richardson. I live at 1015 Angler, well, I live part of the year at 1015 Angler Drive. I'm one of the people that has been around throughout the entire process of the conditional use permits. I bought my place in 1989, and Will Jarrig was the very first permit. And the idea was that if somebody had a use that was compatible with the area, and they used the example when I bought my property of a guide that lived there and wanted to operate a guiding business. And over the years, it's crept and crept. In respect to, there's a couple of things that I'd like to clarify. They talked in the plan that they asked that the property owner to the west is the city. There's 600 acres that is the Cone property that's conservation, it's managed for conservation. It was bought with Exxon Valdez funds. I know that because I was the president of the Kenai River Special Management Area Board when it happened. It's owned by the state of Alaska and managed by Fish and Game. And the other question, I guess, in terms of permits, over the years when I've testified, I'm a research economist. I looked up and found that at the time that I looked several years ago, there were 28 conditional use permits allowed, approved on Angler Drive. And I looked to see with the work, we worked with the borough to see how many were actually reporting income and paying taxes on that. And the number was 11 at that time. So that gives you a number. I agree with the first two testifiers. I'm the number 3 property down on your list of the drawing there. And, you know, they do have, this has really changed the character. There were a lot of residents that used to live there, and the city comp plan, you know, really promoted the idea of people spending a bunch of money and building nice houses. And this is one area, if you look at places like in areas of Soldotna and other places in Kenai, there's not a lot of property down by the Kenai River, but I would have to be a fool to spend $1 million and build a nice house. I have one of the nicest lots on the property, and I intended to retire and live there. We can't do that. My wife is scared to be on our property without me there. Last summer, we had 2 instances where 2 men wandered in from the next door property and started, you know, trying to enter our property. I had trespass issues going on. And as the first 2 testifiers, said, over the years, I have loud drunken parties constantly next door. I have, golf carts running in, music blaring away, really and we have really tried. My neighbor, Ron Rogowski, and I on the other side have been working for years to try and work with the city of Kenai to deal with these issues. We've met with the city of police twice. We've phoned the police time after time, and they're always polite and respectful, and they try and come out, but they don't do anything useful. We've met with the city manager. We've met with the city attorney. We've sent letters in. We've begged the city to address this problem, and we have not had anything that helps the situation. So my request is that this sounds kind of harmless, a few more cabins, but if those people drive down for existence, you know, he knows the person that's the biggest troublemaker. If he sends people down there and adds, you know, if he has 4 cabins and there's a couple of people per cabin, and he sends them down to the illegal outdoor nightclub, and they get drunk and howl at the moon and create lots of problems, then everybody loses. And I guess I will agree with what other people have said, that we've tried real hard and in a constructive manner to work with the city of Kenai, and we have not been successful. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, let's see if any of the commissioners have any questions. Commissioner Halstead, you good? I guess he's good. I didn't see it. Okay. Anyone else online who would like to testify to PZ 2021-15?
It looks like Luke's laptop has had his hand raised. So we're going to go with Luke's laptop next. If you would please state your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, my name's Rachel Lowe, and address is 411 Edie's Way, Kenai.
All right, go ahead and testify.
Hi, I just want to address the council and appreciate your guys' time. So I'm involved in the project. My name's Rachel Lowe, and I've actually, years ago, my family had a lodge there. We've got 4 generations that have participated in living and boosting the economy on Engler Drive. I grew up there the majority of my life, and as I know, we were there in 1986, and we had the original first conditional land use permit for High-Low Charters and Riverside Lodge, along with many other lodges and charter businesses that, by them being there, they've helped bring tourists to our economy and help boost the economy. And I know that there's some concerns people are saying about partying and stuff, but this is an investment. Like I said, 4 generations. My grandfather, he had a place on the river there. We did. We've had multiple properties over the years on Engler Drive, and it's a you know, with the COVID and whatnot, you've seen a decline in our community, and we're seeing people coming back, and this opportunity allows me to reintroduce myself to the lodging business there, which I was one of the best part of my lives, and I grew up and I lived on Engler Drive year round, and I enjoyed that process, and now I get to allow my kids to participate, and that's going to help with our income and bring more tourists here and let them enjoy Alaska and help bring income to the community with taxes. And, you know, they're going to invest their money into businesses, restaurants, stores. And I know people are talking about partying and whatnot, but that's not our intent. This is our investment, and we want to, you know, have a upstanding place there and have people, you know, return and enjoy what we've grown up with our whole lives. So I mean, I understand, because I know someone was concerning that people come out of state and they buy properties, but I've lived here my entire life. My husband and I both are going to be participant in this, and my brother's grown up here, my dad's grown up here, my grandfather was here, and we've all been, you know, well aware of how Engler Drive is and the businesses there, and have good relationships. And us having the cabins allows us to work with other lodges, and when they have customers that they don't have lodging for, that allows them to have access, their customers access, you know, close to their lodges, whether they're traveling to hotels or whatnot. It's going to be convenient for them too. And like I said, that area is primary. I think when I was there, there was 3 year-round residents, and that primarily is a place of charter businesses and lodging. So it's not new to the area here, and it's I mean, it's a common thing there, and I think it.
Hey, Rachel.
Benefit.
You might not be able to hear. The buzzer went off for the 3 minutes, so I was going to let you wrap it up. But I'll find out if anyone else has any questions for you, and then if there is, you can answer those. So, anybody have any questions for Rachel?
I just have one.
Commissioner Dothett.
Yep, I have one question there, Rachel. Is this going to be just a summertime use cabins, or is it going to be planned on for a year-round rentals also?
Right now, we're just doing summer rentals. It's going to be, because like I said, I've grown up here, and I know a lot of people that have lodges, and they've already said, you know, if you're going to have lodges, we'll book with you and have our clients stay with you. So as of now, my only plan is to do the summer.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Commissioner Halstead, you good? Oh, go ahead.
I did have a concern in regards to, since you've been there as long as you have you had instances where There's been loud noise complaints, or police have been called. Have you witnessed any of this yourself, or have you had to deal with any of this yourself? And how has that affected you being in that area?
I'm not living there right now, but I'm not aware of that. But I definitely, for me, that would be, I mean, that'd be concerning, and that's not what I want to bring to that area. I want it to be a positive influence on the community. I'm pretty meticulous about what kind of people will be there. And it's, you know, I want people that are coming to enjoy Alaska and bring money into our economy, but I'm not looking for partying. Like I said, it's our investment, and I don't want things run down and having a bad reputation. And I helped run my dad's business for years, and so it was successful. And unfortunately, if there were at the time I could afford to have bought it, I would have, but I wasn't in the financial means. So now this is where kind of going back to, I'm older and I could go back to my roots.
All right, anyone else? All right, thank you, Rachel. If you can stay on the line in case there is some questions maybe after we close the public hearing that we may need answered, please do that.
All right, and DG Mays, I see you raising your hand. You are next. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Dwayne Mays, and I live at 4619 Burrison Drive in Eagle River, Alaska. And I wanted to just offer a few comments specific to the gentleman that this is all about, you know, King of the River. So, if you will, can I
Wrong one, huh?
offer some comments?
Yeah, you know what? Hey, I think you are one ahead of us. We're on PZ 2021-15 still right now. Yeah, I think you are. You're concerned about the one on Dolchuk?
Okay. I will mute myself.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
All right, anyone else out there?
If there's anyone else on Zoom wishing to testify to PZ 2021-15, go ahead and raise your hand or unmute yourself.
All right, at this time, if there's nobody in the chambers that decided they wanted to come up and speak, if not, we will close the public hearing. Looks like we will do that, bring it back to the commission. Discussion. Commissioner Dothett.
I have a few questions about the rental cabin properties here. With the conditional use permit, is there going to be further, I'm assuming there will be a much more detailed map of the layout and the schematics and where utilities could possibly go and stuff like that on this particular piece of property?
Chair Twait, Commissioner Dothett, yes, that is correct. And actually, let me reference the recommendations. And so it does require a building permit before construction. So that would be going to the building official for the city. In addition, a landscape site plan would need to be submitted and reviewed by myself. And that is a detailed plan. Like I said, what we've gotten with this submission is I would just say a very, very basic, a little sketch. I would say a couple of things when considering that with a conditional use permit and what we receive for site plans is sometimes they can kind of vary from applicants. I will say that sometimes applicants will go a little bit more on the sketch side of things, because to do construction drawings, as built for your building official, or to do a landscape site plan does take, a significant amount of investment from a property owner. And so if a permit was denied, then potentially they've spent, a lot of kind of time, money, and effort in creating the more detailed plans. But so I did want to kind of note that, but to get straight to your question, yes, there would be Much more specific plans required the landscape site plan reviewed by myself, which could also be concurrent with any of the building permits put in for construction of the cabins, could be concurrently reviewed.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it just, looking at the site overview map, it just seemed like there's a lot of wetlands around that general area, and not being able to see just where they were positioned. One of my concerns would come into the feasibility of septic system and stuff on the usable land there. That was it. That was all. But that'll
Yeah.
be taken up with the building permit.
That's correct, Commissioner Douthat. And that's the other thing, too, is even starting with Condition 1, further development of the property should conform to all federal, state of Alaska, and local regulations. It's to say that, if something did come along further down the road, it still needs to meet code.
Anyone else have any questions or discussion? Commissioner Springer?
Yeah, it's a question for staff. Do you have any idea exactly how many conditional use permits have been issued on Angler Drive area for bed and breakfast or whatever, type of lodging? Any idea?
Chair Twait, Commissioner Springer, I actually don't have an exact number, but I would say there's several.
A lot.
Yeah, there's at least a handful, if not more.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Oh, Commissioner Halstead.
Yeah, I had a question for staff, and perhaps I misunderstood the testimony earlier. They'd referred to that location as already being cleared out and started preparations, pilings had been drilled. Is that previous construction, or is that in preparation for this getting approved? Does that affect that at all if they've already done that kind of work without getting any prior approval? I mean, it's their land, they can do what they want with it, I suppose, but does that affect anything on our end, or did we check that out on our end?
Well, let me take a step. Well, you look like you're poised and ready to go, so I'll let you go first. How about that? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Twait, Commissioner Halstead. I'm not familiar with any of the activities that may have occurred for, what I just call, groundwork, whether it's clearing, grubbing, grading, pad site. I'm not familiar with that work. I would say it's possible that could be work that would be done, without submitting, a building permit, but certainly on the construction side of things would require, a building permit. And like I said, in this case, requiring a landscape site plan submitted as well for the 4 cabin rentals. So I'm not familiar with what the history of any activities on the parcel, though. I just note that it's classified as being vacant without a structure on the parcel currently.
Yeah, and I would just add to that by saying that doing any kind of clearing on there generally is permitted. I mean, we're not talking, it could be a single-family house you're putting on there or whatever the case may be. So that isn't technically getting ahead of the conditional use permit necessarily, like it was mentioned earlier. So,
Right. I think my concern was more on whether or not they were kind of moving forward, whether we said yes or no side of it. I mean, there's a lot that you can do, again, with your own property that you paid for. But if you had physically gone on site to see the location prior to the meeting today, or if they're already up there, and whether we said yes or no, I think that's more of an issue than not.
yeah, like I said, I don't think that hits our purview at all. So I think, like I said, it's well within their right to do that at this point in time. So, Vice Chair Fikes.
I guess, just through the chair and possibly administration, just have grave concerns about the operation. Like I say, this isn't the first time I've heard about a application for a conditional use permit in opposition from adjoining properties and concerns about safety and hours of operation. And I didn't see anything in the application as far as hours of operation. And I didn't hear any remedies that if there was an issue, how the applicant was going to remedy or solution to what they were going to do if they did have problems. And I guess the concern I have with administration is what do we have on record as far as any kind of complaints from anybody who is currently holding a conditional use permit on those areas? So if this is a continued complaint that we're hearing, how is the city addressing those complaints if their only mechanism is a complaint? And if they address enough complaints, then they have the potential to supposedly revoke these permits. So is that taking place, or is anybody actively going out and addressing these complaints?
I'm gonna see if I can't put our city attorney on the spot for just a second, to maybe just give us what that outline looks like when and if somebody has a complaint with one of these conditional use permits. What's the process, and how should we expect these to go in the future? And if I put you on the spot, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Commissioner Twait, Commissioner Fikes. So these are reviewed on an annual basis, and if there are problems, these conditional use permits certainly can be revoked. They're revoked by the Planning and Zoning Commission, and that's through a public process. There's a public hearing involved. And so that is the process for revoking a conditional use permit. We do have one conditional use permit on Angler Drive that has generated a lot of neighborhood complaints, and we've been trying to deal with that and working with both the neighbors and the property owner. I'm not sure that anybody's really happy about that situation, but there is one in particular on Angler Drive that we have had numerous complaints about.
All right, anybody have any? Commissioner Greenberg.
Yeah, I just want to say there are a lot of these permits in that area. I think they've all gone through the same process, and as the city attorney has said, there is a review annually, which should help to alleviate some of the concerns that the folks that live there, if there is a troublemaker or something like that. This permit meets all the criteria that all the rest of those permits have met. I don't think it would be really. It doesn't have any reason to. I don't have any reason to vote against it. It would be unfair, I think, just because there's so many more. There's no limit to these number of permits. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dothett.
I just wanted to add something about in this particular area. I believe it was Mr. Baldwin. I might be misspoken. When you spoke of the affecting the so to speak, basically the ambiance of that general area, I believe in this particular case and instance, this goes along with what's already going on with the majority of that subdivision in particular, and I feel to say no to this would be counterproductive because it's already happening. I would go out on a limb and say 80 or 90% of the probably, don't quote me on those exact numbers, are probably these similar businesses already on that area. So if you were to be a new homeowner in that area, you're going to see that coming already, and it's something you're going to be most likely aware of. So I don't see it being out of the ordinary in this particular instance on this particular subdivision.
Anyone else? One thing I'm going to mention, and again, I appreciate Mr. Bloom being here to help kind of at least get that subject started as far as the process goes for appeals. But if it appears to me, if there's that many issues that we're seeing or hearing and somehow they're not getting addressed here, my suggestion would be if you're calling those things in, don't put something in writing, and then it goes in a file for this yearly review, and it's got to help the process, because I know each and every one of us up here, when we approve these, it's with the intention that if things aren't run the way it's scheduled to run on there, that they can be revoked, and should be, depending on how severe they are, if they can't remedy them. So it's kind of disturbing. I know for me, I've been here on this for quite a while, but we kind of have a lot of faith in the fact that it's working, and we don't hear about this. And so if you're not getting the answers when you come into the hall during business hours here, come to your council meeting, make opportunities, because like I said, I hope it's not as bad as you guys think or are saying it is, but if it is, it's something that certainly needs to be dealt with. So I guess that's all I have to say regarding that. I agree with Commissioner Dothett, I think, and Commissioner Greenberg. It certainly falls within the parameters to qualify for a conditional use permit. And again, there's an appeal period that we can deal with down the line, so it doesn't mean that it's over yet. But I would be voting also in favor of it. I think it meets the criteria that Planner Foster brought forth. Anyone else? Vice Chair Fikes.
Through the chair to staff, so if this is a conditional use permit to operate rental cabins, are there means or conditions that we can attach to this?
Chair Twait, Commissioner Fikes, I believe that is within the authority of the Planning and Zoning Commission to have any considerations for other conditions. I will say the 8 conditions, provided, that's conditions that's recommended by staff. I would just say it's my understanding that the commission has the authority to consider other additional conditions.
Is there a way to incorporate hours of operation or a quiet time, or is there a limit on complaints received for an immediate 30-day review for potential revocation of it, or do they have to wait the entire 12-month period?
Chair Twait, Commissioner Fikes, that's a really good question. I'm not sure if I can answer that potentially completely. I would say I would think when it comes to hours of operation and potentially maybe noise, that potentially that could be something that the commission would be able to craft and put in for consideration as an additional condition. But then your additional question was if we would be able to essentially sort of put some type of condition in there that would be a trigger to revoke the permit. Is that correct? Is that what you're sort of driving at?
Yeah, it's just me speaking personally on the panel or the commission here. This is not my first time hearing it, and I concur 100% with what I'm hearing tonight. And it, to me, for lack of a better way to explain it, feels like just a rubber stamp. And it doesn't feel like the residents in the area are getting any kind of teeth to these conditional use permits. And it doesn't feel like the process is being followed when they complain as far as getting them renewed. So if we're hearing on a regular basis that there's complaints out there, and then we're turning around and telling the residents that if you complain, then when we hear back in a year and we review the application, then we'll make something. And I hear administration saying that it's up to us to revoke them, or we have that tool. But I can't ever recall seeing one come up for revocation. But I continually hear about devaluation of property. I continually hear about complaints of noise and continual, problems with law enforcement enforcing the rules. So I get that this person wants to have an application. I have also concerns that it's not complete. And this isn't the first time we've received an application where there's very little detail. And so for this much complaint and opposition, that concerns me too.
Chair Twait, Commissioner Fikes, and I think that's from staff's point of view, that's within the commission's purview as well at this time, that if the commission did want to request for more details on the conditional use permit, I would say that's within the commission's purview and authority as well. And I would say, just to go back to the question regarding revocation, there is a process in the code that's set for how a revocation of a conditional use permit occurs. So I would say that would be what I would say right now to have for consideration of how that process would work. That's why I was really not, fully able to kind of answer the question on whether we could at this time put in something that would create kind of a trigger to say, hey, here's the mechanism for revocation, since there's already a process like that in the code.
Okay, I guess what I was, through the chair, and just to follow up on that, I guess what I was looking at is these applications come forward and asking for a conditional use permit is some kind of a business model of how they're gonna operate this business. It's very vague and very ambiguous, and then like I say, when you're met with this kind of opposition, it feels like we don't have any kind of feedback. So as far as this one, like I say, I have grave concerns about it, but everybody else seems like it just checks off the boxes, but I strongly disagree. So I'll be voting against it.
Can I?
Chair Twait and Commissioner Fikes, I would just say, just reiterate again that I believe it's within the authority of the commission to ask for more information from an applicant as well.
Commissioner Greenberg.
It sounds to me from listening to the people in the neighborhood and from listening to the city attorney that there is like one bad apple in this area. And whatever anybody can do to really address that person who seems to be giving this whole process a bad name, that should be done. But that's not this permit. That's not this particular permit. This meets all the criteria.
No, hang on, I can't. It'll turn into a wild zoo here if we do that. I just can't do that. Sorry, I appreciate it. You can talk to him afterwards if you'd like, if he wants to. What's that? Oh, Mr. Bloom.
Thank you, Commissioner Twait. I would like to just add, because Commissioner Fikes asked a question that's relevant. And our code provides that revocation of a conditional use permit can be done based on an annual review or any other investigation undertaken, that the conduct of the operation is not in compliance with the terms and conditions of the permit, the provisions of the zoning code, or the permit holder is not current on obligations to the city. So one thing that I think Commissioner Fikes brings up that's relevant is one reason that the commission can revoke something is if they violate the terms of the permit. So, for example, if somebody's making noise after 11 o'clock, if that's not a condition, then it's not a cause for revocation. But if you put in the conditional use permit that they have to be quiet after 10 o'clock, and you get, verified evidence that they're not, then that is a violation of the condition. So if you have concerns about, the operation, you can either, impose reasonable conditions or maybe postpone and ask the applicant to provide you conditions that they will agree to abide by that you can incorporate into the permit. And that, that gives the commission a better opportunity to police these once they're issued.
Vice Chair Fikes.
Through the chair, and just to follow up, that was another direction I was gonna go, is not to feel like a rubber stamp, and I do hear what my commissioners are saying, is they do feel that the criteria has been met, so as another tool or an opportunity might be to postpone and allow staff and the applicant more time to cohesively come together with a more full packet and greater detail on what that business model might look like, so. If that's an opportunity for an amendment for a postponement, then I might be open to that as well.
So, Commissioner Twait, if
Yep.
you're gonna ask staff to get together with the applicant, I think you would need to provide more direction to staff as to what you're looking for, because staff has already gotten together with the applicant and presented you this information.
I guess what I'm looking for is a better detail on what the business operation is to address the noise concerns.
Okay, Rachel, are you still out there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay, I got a quick question for you. So I'm guessing this is going to be something that you're planning on putting into use more in 2022 than this year, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so if we postpone this, go ahead.
Well, we do. I mean, I've had people like I said, I've have different lodges that I've talked to with charter businesses that would like to utilize our space for their clients that they have, because as of now, they said they have their, like, people that I've talked to, they're up 186% from last year for their booking and lodging, and they don't have the lodging. And
Well, so my question is simply this: if we postponed it till our next meeting, so that you could get some things maybe that we may send you to get, is that going to be a deal breaker as far as you're concerned? Would you rather us impose conditions tonight, or would you like to work with staff and we'll come back in 2 weeks and do it again?
now, could you clarify that for me?
Well, we're going to probably add a few more conditions to what has already been addressed from your application. So maybe hours of operation, quiet by this time, something like that. So would you rather work with the staff here in the next 2 weeks to come up with something that you think is workable for you, or we will figure out what we think's best for you? And that usually is not as, we're two different pictures probably of that puzzle. So I guess if it doesn't matter, if you're not trying to move people in this summer still for rentals, then 2 weeks shouldn't matter, I wouldn't think. But I was just kind of curious what your time frame was for completion of this.
This summer I am planning on it.
Okay.
And so, I mean, I guess I understand, I see people are concerned with a specific individual, but it seems like that's a different topic.
Yeah, and again, we're going to, because we've got a lot of stuff still to do. As far as just two options, either we'll put some conditions tonight on it, or we'll wait 2 weeks and you can get with staff. Do you have a preference?
Yes, give me one second, because I got to text my brother.
Can we, as the board, decide in a vote if we want to add conditions to the consent, or is it just one person can add consent for that?
We'll make a motion, and then we'll get a second, we'll discuss that amendment, vote on the amendment, and go back and forth till we take care of them that way.
Chairman Tway.
Now, my question is, if these conditions are put on us, are they going to be put on the other conditions?
Well, what we'll do is probably do a little research on what that looks like and see if we can find some of what the other conditions are around there. But yours is going to be what yours is compared to if there happens to be other conditions on as far as time frames. I'm pretty sure I've done enough of these down there that there's some that we have time, hours of operation, and, and it's not, it's pretty liberal. You only have a few hours in the middle of the night, I think, that we kind of normally shut down. But so anyway, but if we pick them, that's yours, and then you can obviously or work with staff, like I said, and come back and we'll do this in 2 weeks. So I just want to give you whatever's easiest and best for you guys.
Yeah, I feel like we're coming into this and you guys are trying to make an example of us.
No, it's really not that, for sure. But we do, I think it's fair to have, quiet time and hours of operations. And I'm pretty sure these other ones on Angler, there's several that probably do. So you're not going to be an example by any stretch. There's others in there for sure.
I mean, I agree with that, but I think if it's going to be implemented, it should be implemented through all of the conditional use permits. I don't think because we're being targeted, almost singled out because of somebody else's choices, which, like I said, I have 4 generations that's been there, and that hasn't been an issue with us. And so, a lot of individuals' concerns are something that's irrelevant to us.
Well, like I said, what we're dealing with this one, and so, and there are other ones in there, and we'll definitely get that list of which ones are and what some of those conditions are. But yours probably back in '86 or something certainly wouldn't have been, and it's probably been grandfathered from there. So, but the newer ones for sure have some of these restraints on them, and they're not terrible. They're really not. I mean, but anyway, I just want to know, so that we can keep this thing moving along. Which way you want to go?
Hold on, I'm waiting for a text.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, there's a couple other people that want to say some things. I'll check with you here in a little bit.
Okay.
Chairman Tway.
Commissioner Springer.
Yes, I have a question for the Rachel, and essentially what my question is how are you going to manage them? do you have a manager on site or in the area or
Yes,
what?
me.
Can you answer that?
Yes. Yes, me. And then my kids will be, they're gonna clean the cabins and whatnot. It's gonna be a family thing. And it's an honoring of my grandfather. He passed away, and that's why the name of it's Don's Camp. He had a place there for 30 years on Angler Drive on the river. And so we're doing this, something he wanted to continue, and so we're following his wishes.
Well, basically, what I wanted to know is your man? Do you have an office right there in the area with a manager or your relatives or whoever on site that can oversee these on a hourly basis?
Me.
You said it's you?
Yeah, I'm gonna manage it, but not 24 hours a day.
Well, no, I know that, but I'm just saying, you don't live in Sterling or something and have to drive in here to do a
No.
management, do you? I'm just want to know if you're in the area and available.
Yes, I live in Kenai.
Okay, all right.
Somebody else had their hand. Commissioner Doffett.
Well, I think before we should put them on the spot on whether they want to submit to our conditions or conditions that they're going to do with staff, as a board or council, we should vote if we want to impose conditions first. If there's a majority of us that don't want to go down that road, then it would be a nullified point, correct?
Fair enough, absolutely. All right, so then that being said, actually, Commissioner Fikes, I have a question. I have a question for you, Commissioner Fikes. So what items are you seeing not complete, I guess? I was trying to read through here, and I don't know that maybe some of the conditions we've talked about as far as hours of operations and such maybe, but as far as what they're doing is pretty clear, I think. But go ahead.
As far as, like you say, is there gonna be somebody on site? Is there gonna be somebody available to answer the phone if there is complaints? Is there gonna be somebody to address the noise issues? So I get that you're local, I get that you're here, I just don't see that in writing as to what that mechanism is to address these concerns for this particular application that's before us. So I was just looking for a way to use the tools at our disposal to satisfy the requirements of those in the audience that had concerns.
All right. So then I have a question for Mr. Foster. So were these things that were asked and just not given you to complete the application, or were they never required to put hours of operation? That was never posed to them?
Churchway, it's not a requirement to
Okay.
submit a complete application, but
Right.
like I said, it's well within the purview of the commission to ask for that information.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And let me just clarify, the only reason why that we're addressing it, or I'm bringing it up, is because there is an issue in a residential area with noise after a reasonable amount of time. So that is why I'm asking for the commission to consider the extra conditions on this particular permit to satisfy the audience's opposition to the noise. That was the reason for the condition.
Okay. So do we want to make an amendment to the original motion to add any conditions? If we want to add any further conditions to the permit.
I guess I'd like to make a motion to add additional hours to operation.
Add additional hours, or you want to put a,
I guess as far as one of the conditions, I think we went through 6 of them, so make 7th to be hours of operation and have it stated in the application what those might be.
what would you like those to be, if we're going to make those changes right now?
Just no loud noises past 10 o'clock.
Okay. We have a motion to add a
Commissioner
condition.
Twait,
Go ahead.
I just want to clarify the amendment. So this is, on the legislation, is this section 2, that the conditional use permit is subject to the following conditions, and this would be condition 9?
9, correct.
Okay.
Thank you,
Yep.
9.
Commissioner Twait, I think after 10 o'clock needs to have another sidebar, 10 till when?
Well, so when does it kick back up in the morning?
Oh, 6 AM, I guess?
Are you on the record with that?
I have one issue with that.
Well,
If
I'll tell you what, we'll get a second, we'll have discussion, we can go from there. So let's get that first.
Would you mind just saying one more time what you would like condition 9 to read?
I'd just like to bring concern to the hours of noise, so just no loud noises past the hours of 10 PM until the hours of 6 AM.
Okay, second?
I'll second.
All right, seconded. Okay, discussion. Commissioner Dothett.
I just have one issue with that particular time frame and the particular aspect of this particular business is that if you look at it as far as a charter aspect, they're meeting their boats at 6 a.m. So in some aspect of that, if somebody's getting up, starting vehicles at 5 in the morning, banging around a little bit with coolers and stuff, is that going to be constant noise complaints? And I just think that has something to do with this particular business. 5 might be more reasonable in this particular business, in that particular area with the lodging and everything, because most of those businesses in the summertime are going to be doing a 6 o'clock start. So most people are up and around and moving boats, starting trucks up, loading stuff up by 5:30. And I would just think that was something we need to consider in this particular instance on this particular type of business. Is that time frame? I would motion to move that to 5 a.m. instead of 6.
We're not going to stack motions. That gets me confused. So
that's
hang
what
on
I
a
was
second.
just-
So,
I was
all
just
right, go
bringing
ahead,
that
Vice Chair Fikes, go ahead.
Yes, I'm open to that. I'm merely looking at a mechanism to help address the noise concerns, and I'm completely open to those hours of operation.
All right, so we're going to have a friendly amendment to make it from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m.?
And do we have concurrence of the second?
You good with that, Joe?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Further discussion.
Just one quick
Nope.
comment. I know I'm out of turn and out of order.
Where's Henry? He's supposed to be taking care of you back there.
But I just want to say, if you've ever lived next to a place and trying to watch a movie at 10 o'clock and they're making a buttload of noise, and I don't mean noise
Okay.
like, we're having a beer, but
Man, write it down. Yeah, I'm sorry. If I go that way, it just goes completely sideways. So I appreciate it. Okay.
got one on me.
All right. Now I forgot. See, now I'm getting to that point where I forget what I was thinking about too now. Okay, so we got a second.
We're doing discussion.
Further discussion regarding 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. I have.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just gonna lay this on staff and/or I don't know if Mr. Bloom. I got two parts to this one. One is it would be helpful. I know there are conditional use permits on Angler that have time frames locked onto them. I don't remember what we did. I was gonna say it was maybe 11 o'clock at night, just because you get late traffic coming from Homer, maybe coming up and things like that. But I'm good with 10 if everybody else wants to go along with 10. But what my bigger question, I guess, is this is sort of like when we were trying to do junk car ordinances or junk in general. One person's perception of junk is not another person. So how do you police noise? We don't go out there with in a stadium with a decimeter. Or whatever. Do that. How do we deal with that?
Thank you, Commissioner Twait. It's certainly something we wrestle with. Different people have different tolerances for noise. I would say that if that's a condition, it can be an unreasonably loud noise or interfere with somebody's reasonable, peace and quiet. In general, what I think these condition like that would do somebody has a recourse if they have a complaint and they can bring it to the commission. And, the commission can investigate it and see whether or not, it substantiates a revocation or some sort of other penalty.
All right.
It's a tough issue.
Yep, I agree. Thank you. Commissioner Greenberg.
Yeah, just, it is a fishing lodge, this dip netting closes at midnight. So a lot of times people come back from dip netting and then they start to fillet. Is that gonna be, it's not super noisy, but is that gonna be a problem?
Well, and again, I think the question is what's it look like to someone else? But I think reasonable. I mean, I'd live right in town on a third of an acre lot, and my neighbors sometimes come home early or late, depending on how you want to look at it, from fishing, and you know, it'll wake me up for a second, and so that is happening. If it's happening every single night, that's a different deal. And I think again, if they come home at midnight, instead of quieting down and doing their stuff at 10, they just don't get to do it that night. You know, they came home late, and as long as, and I'm sure it gets complaint driven, and you know, like I said, I don't think you're going to get yours, you know, revoked after one or maybe even two official warnings about it. But I mean, that gives them an opportunity to figure out what is tolerable in the neighborhood and live within that, I think. So, Commissioner Dothett.
I guess goes back to the city attorney. You had mentioned that we have one residence down there that has multiple complaints. Do we have a rough idea, or is there a written number of complaints that we've had on this particular permit? On the one that's in question, not the one that's in question, but the one that seems to be causing the most concern about more of these being issued?
I'm sorry, so the number of complaints, I'd say they're numerous. I mean, we can check our police records about number of calls to the property. They're pretty substantial. We've spent a lot of time and effort on compliance.
And when does that, I guess it hasn't been answered really, I haven't heard it, is at what point the number of complaints, is there a certain number of complaints that trigger us to be approached with a revocation, or how does that work?
So this is an older permit, so there's complaints about it, but this conditional use permit didn't originally have conditions regarding, you know, noise after certain hours. We've worked with the operator now to get those in place in a separate agreement. I'm not sure that the conditional use permit itself has been amended, but it's been an ongoing problem with, we're doing our best to deal with it, but I know we haven't made the neighbors happy.
So I guess my concern is a little bit felt here is that there's no real amount or number or type of complaints that's going to set off to be sent to us for revocation. It just is going to be handled in-house. And I'm just wondering at what point, whether there's a blanket general idea of what's the issue is people are unhappy with the way a business is being operated under a conditional use permit. Is there or is there not a trigger? At what point would we get it for revocation if we don't have something in, like, okay, at 80 decibels it's considered high level, or at 10 o'clock at night if they're making above certain, if it's not black and white, is there a set trigger for us to get it back for consideration of removal?
There's not currently like objective criteria, like if there's 6 complaints, and I would caution against making it just based on complaints, because you know, you have one unhappy neighbor and they could just make as many complaints as they want, and whether they're reasonable or not, I think it's important for the commission to do its own investigation to see, you know, whether or not the conditions are being violated based on the evidence that's brought before it. I know people take videos with their cell phones and bring them in and show us how loud people are being, you know, not just related to this, but to other things as well, so.
I understand that, and I'm just turning my head. I guess if we don't ever know about it as a commission,
right? So
and it never goes from your the city's enforcement side or the desk, how do we know how to investigate something if we never see it?
It should be getting reported to you. I'm not sure why it's not. If the police are getting called for conditional use, it should be making its way to you. I don't know why it hasn't, other than maybe, you know, we've had a lot of turnover in our planning department lately, and but that's certainly a misstep if that information is not getting to you.
And I think that's where all of us, and I haven't been on the commission an excessive amount of time, but I haven't heard anything coming back, and it doesn't sound like it's really been something any of us have really heard much of. And I would think that needs to be addressed for sure.
And again, those are things we'll, outside of this, let's go back to our amendment from 10 to 5 and see if we have any other discussion regarding that. And if we don't, I guess we'll call the roll on the amendment to put hours of, this isn't hours of operation, even. We want just quiet time?
I would call it a condition of noise.
Okay.
Just to limit the noise to a minimum after 10 o'clock.
Till 5 a.m.
till
Okay.
5 a.m. And I recognize it's a business, and I recognize that there's absolutely complaints, and I'm trying to meet in the middle by accommodating both the business operation as well as the residential. And I absolutely appreciate what the attorney says, is if we don't put something like this in conditions, in the permit that's before us, then we take away that opportunity for them to administer what they need to during inspections and renewals.
Okay. Yep, we're ready for the vote.
All right, Commissioner Halstead,
Yes.
Commissioner Dothett,
No.
Vice Chair Fikes,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenberg,
No.
Commissioner Woodard,
No.
Chair Twait,
Yes.
and Commissioner Springer.
No.
Okay, motion fails.
Okay, we have the main motion still on the floor. Do we want to look at adding any other conditions or?
I've got a concern.
Oh, yep, Commissioner Halstead, go ahead.
My hand's up there.
Sorry.
So because this is such a sensitive subject, and because of the nature of where we are on the peninsula, these conditional use permits for this type of activity come up a lot, just in the time that I've been here. Would it be prudent to have table this for the next meeting and have a potential work session where we would plan out kind of an overall, guidelines, again, not to single out a single person or punish a single person for the crimes of the previous applications, but would a smarter move be to actually have a work session where we can, I guess, more openly or freely come up with a really good plan instead of trying to quick fire something out tonight?
We're the ones that have to drive home tonight, not you. So I guess if you are actually making a motion to postpone, we'll take that up right now. I would say these guys probably don't want to come back again. So if we think we can get to something relatively soon, I'd rather keep with that, but I will bow to the will of the masses. So, Joe, if you want to make that motion, we can certainly do that.
Commissioner Twait,
I
so
would
the
say my
motion
motion
would,
would be
Hey,
to.
hey, Joe, hold on just a second. Mr. Bloom.
so you have two options. I'm not sure what he intends, but he either has to postpone to a date certain, which would be your next meeting, or postpone indefinitely, which means it wouldn't necessarily be taken back up.
Did you hear that, Joe?
I would postpone until to the next meeting, with the understanding that we would have a work session, or give us the opportunity to have a work session to properly address this. So if we're not planning on having a work session to address this, then there's no need to postpone it.
Okay, that would be the 26th of May, and we need a second on postponement.
I guess I'll second to go for vote.
All right.
Second on postponement.
Okay, we got a second. Any discussion on, no, there's no, we'll go straight to vote on postponement, don't we?
All right, Commissioner Dothett,
No.
Vice Chair Fikes,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenberg,
No.
Commissioner Woodard,
Yes.
Chair Twait,
No.
Commissioner Springer,
No.
and Commissioner Halstead.
Yes.
Okay, motion fails.
All right. Back before us, just the main motion. Any other discussion about adding anything, or Commissioner Dothett, go ahead.
Just real, I just want to bring it just seems to me it's not so much this particular motion as the concern is coming to me is, and a lot of the commissioners here, is this the breakdown from the enforceable side of it for revocation. And I think that's where a lot of this contention has come up, and that's where stuff needs to be addressed. So I think we need to keep in mind that a lot of this tension right now isn't necessarily just because of just this one, but it's the breakdown that we have come across as of for everybody being here, and it's good that they're here talking about it, is that there's a loss of connection, of communication between two parties here as far as being able to revocate or have an issue with a previous complaints. So,
Any other discussion? Commissioner Greenberg?
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a good discussion, and I think that the ability to revoke these is something that everybody's kind of frustrated with, but I don't think it's really fair to apply that to this particular person who hasn't done any of those offenses that everybody's talking about.
All right. Anyone else? All right, please call the roll.
All right, Vice Chair Fikes,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Woodard,
Yes.
Chair Twait,
Yes.
Commissioner Springer,
Yes.
Commissioner Halstead,
Yes.
Commissioner Dothett.
yes.
Motion passes.
All right, and there is a 15-day appeal period that an affected party can file with the clerk's office here. So if there is no complaints or any objections, then your permit will be granted 15 days from today. Thank you. We're good to keep rolling. Anybody need to take a break? We're good? All right, we're going to go ahead and keep on moving then. As long as somebody can get me a water. You drinking your water? I'll have somebody get one. Thank you. All right, at this time, we will call to order, or call to order. We will go to item F2 and under public hearings. F2 is a resolution PZ 2021-16 and PZ 2021-17. It's an application for a conditional use permit for a guide service and lodging for the property described as Lot 4, Block 4, Basin View Subdivision, Part 3, located at 345 Dolchik Lane. The application was submitted by Dean Schlehofer, P.O. Box 21565, Anchorage. Staff report.
Thank you, Chair Twait and fellow commissioners. Staff's presentation is on Resolution PZ 2021-16, conditional use permit for a guide service, as well as a Resolution PZ 2021-17, conditional use permit for lodging for 345 Dolchik Lane. I did want to note just a few things. There is a laydown for this case that was provided late this afternoon. There were four in the packet. There were 4 emails in opposition to both of these resolutions. There are several in the laydown, all of them in opposition to both the resolutions. One thing I did want to just note about in the laydown, I'm not going to go through kind of those in detail. I think there's actually a number of folks who would be providing their own testimony, and so I don't think I would look to be trying to read any of these into the record, or at least that's my recommation, just not to read those into the record at this time. I did want to note that one of the laydown items is the covenants, conditions, and restrictions for this neighborhood. I did want to note one thing before we go a little bit further in the discussion, is that, especially since some commissioners just might not be familiar with what we call CCRs, just because they don't come up very often at the commission. So I just want to note that, so these are CCRs are an agreement, a legal agreement between private property owners in this neighborhood and the homeowners association. They're not a part of the review for conditional use permit per Kenai Municipal Code. So I kind of wanted to make the distinction that upon the review of conditional use permit, that CCRs are private, agreements that are to be considered, separate from the review of the conditional use permit. Next slide, please. So brief summary, applicants Dean Michael Schliehofer. This is for 345 Dolchek Lane. It's at approximately 1.94 acre parcel. It is zoned currently for rural residential. There is an existing single-family dwelling on the property, and then the land use plan designation is low-density residential, and we can see here the subject property that we'll be discussing this evening. Next slide, please. The applicant has recently purchased this property and would like to conduct a guide service and lodge from the premises. Kenai Municipal Code 1422, the land use table provides that a guide service and lodging are conditional uses requiring a conditional use permit. The applicant states that the purpose for this conditional use request is to help him serve King of the River's clients who have booked with him to sleep over and leave in the morning to join a professional guide for fishing on King of the River's riverboats on the Kenai or Kasilof rivers. This is a 100% fishing service that includes accommodations, and the applicant does not offer any accommodations without first booking a fishing trip. Next slide, please. Site plan identifies layout of the existing and subject property. It's not really a formal, site plan as we typically understand them, but it does show, and there's actually a number of other photos of the property that you can just see the existing layout, including here the parking and the parking dimensions, and we'll mention that a little bit further in the review of the criteria. Next slide, please. Staff's analysis, KMC 142150D, review criteria for conditional use permits. Pursuant to KMC 142150A, the intent of a conditional use permit is to allow some uses that may be compatible with the designated principal uses in specific zoning districts, provided certain conditions are met. KMC 1420-150D, conditional use permits review criteria, states 6 conditions that the Planning and Zoning Commission must deem to exist when establishing findings prior to issuing a conditional use permit. Next slide, please. And so we're going to review each one of these conditions. Criteria 1, the use is consistent with the purpose of this chapter and the purposes and intent of the zoning district. And staff's response is that the proposed guide service and lodging meets the intent of the rural residential zoning district to provide for low-density residential development and outlying in rural areas in a form which creates a stable and attractive residential environment. And the specific intent in establishing this zoning district is 1, to separate residential structures to an extent which will A, preserve the rural open quality of the environment, and B, prevent health hazards in areas not served by public water and sewer. And 2, to prohibit uses which would A, violate the residential character of the environment, and B, generate heavy traffic in predominantly residential areas. The guide services and lodging are proposed to take place in an existing single-family home. There are no proposed physical changes that would violate the residential character of the neighborhood. The maximum capacity of 4 bedrooms for lodging is not anticipated to generate heavy traffic in the neighborhood and likely results in roughly the same number of vehicle trips as other single-family homes in the neighborhood. And I would just note to say that that's really not an objective statement. We try to, as much as we can in our review criteria, to be as objective as possible, but that's really a little bit more subjective. Just noting that the conditional use permit is predicated on the lodging for 4 bedrooms of this property, and that with that being the maximum utilization of it, that the maximum number of vehicles required by code for parking would actually be 5. So that's 1 for the principal property, as well as 1 for each of the bedrooms to be provided as lodging. So again, just being, just not, not being as objective as that we would like to do, but trying to just make a comparison of that part of the zoning district to say prohibit uses which would generate heavy traffic in predominantly residential areas is that, a similar, 4+ bedroom home probably generates a lot of vehicle trips in that people, go to work, go to school, go grocery shopping, and live their lives. So, like I said, roughly same number of vehicle trips. KMC 1422 land use table provides that guide services and lodging are a conditional use. Therefore, a conditional use permit must be granted for the operation of these services. The applicant has provided illustrations of the layout of the property and floor plans and elevations of the single-family home. Criteria 2, the value of the adjoining property or neighborhood will not be significantly impaired. Staff's response is that this parcel is approximately 1.94 acres in size, contains a large paved driveway in front of the residence to accommodate parking of guest vehicles. The area photo provided by the applicant indicates the distance provided between the structures and the tree line provides a natural buffer between adjoining properties. The parcels located the north, south, east, and west are zoned rural residential and have similar single-family residential uses as the subject property. The value of adjacent property should not be significantly impacted by the addition of guide services and lodging uses. The physical characteristics of the property remain unchanged. Criteria 3, the proposed use is in harmony with the comprehensive plan. Staff's response is that the comprehensive plan has goals to support businesses and economic development and provide a high quality of life within the city. Goal 2 of the comprehensive plan is to provide economic development to support the fiscal health of Kenai. The tourism industry is an important component for economic development within the city of Kenai. The guide services are bed and breakfast, cabin rentals, lodging business, all of those support the tourism industry, and that the low-density residential land uses typically include single-family, low-density, large lots with individual on-site water supply and wastewater disposal systems, which we have here on the subject property. Below are specific goals and objectives from the comprehensive plan that support the CUP application, and that's Economic Development 9. Capitalize on the tourism industry by marketing Kenai as a destination for recreational activities, conventions, festivals, arts, cultural, and other events. Criteria 4, public services and facilities are adequate to serve the proposed use. Staff's response is that city water and sewer lines are not available in this area. Therefore, the property owner has installed a private water well and septic system. Natural gas, electricity, and telephone services are available. Dolchek Avenue is a paved road, which is maintained by the city of Kenai, and the operation of a guide service and lodge will not impact these facilities. Criteria 5, the proposed use will not be harmful to public safety, health, or welfare. Staff's response is that the property is serviced by a private well and septic system, which have been installed by the property owner. Public utilities are available, and access to the property is via a city-maintained paved road. There's no reason to believe that the operation of the guide service and lodge will be harmful to the public safety, health, or welfare of the community. And then criteria 6, specific conditions deemed necessary. We'll discuss that on the next slide. City staff find that the applicant meets the criteria for issuance of a conditional use permit as set forth in subsections D1 through D4 of Kenai Municipal Code 142185, and hereby recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission approve the conditional use permit application subject to the following conditions. And I'm going to go ahead and read through all of the conditions. Condition 1, further development of the property should conform to all federal, state of Alaska, and local regulations. Condition 2, a yearly conditional use permit report must be submitted to the City of Kenai prior to the 31st day of December of each year. Condition 3, biennial fire inspection must be completed by the fire marshal for the City of Kenai. Condition 4, the applicant will meet with city staff for on-site inspections when requested. Next slide, please. Condition 5, if there is a change of use for the above described property, a new conditional use permit must be obtained pursuant to 1420-150I-5. Condition 6, pursuant to KMC 1420-150I-2, this permit shall expire automatically upon termination or interruption of the use for a period of at least 1 year. Condition 7, before a floating dock can be installed, the property owner must receive the proper permits from the Kenai River Center. And Condition 8, failure to provide documentation to the city for meeting these conditions shall be grounds for the suspension or revocation of the conditional use permit. That completes my presentation. I'm happy to stand for questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Foster. We will start by getting a motion on the floor, please. Commissioner
Motion.
Dothett.
I'll give a motion for approval on, I was reading down too far.
Well, I'll tell you what, let me stop you right there and let me ask staff here. So are we got two different resolutions here, right? So we're dealing with 16 only first, correct?
I believe, yeah, we need a separate motion, so we'll do a motion for 16, and have a public hearing for that, and then after,
We'll
that's
go
voted
through-
on, then we'll go into in 17, is that?
We definitely need two motions and probably two public hearings, although I think we can incorporate the staff report from the first public hearing into the second public hearing without restating the same thing.
So so that we're not just reading a number, so everybody understands. The first one specifically deals with, you fill in the blank.
It's a resolution